and welcome to lesson number 10. How can students represent what they know? In this lesson, we'll talk about how students represent what they know about a concept. Traditionally, students use paper and pencil to create a written document or complete a written test on the subject, if it's in the academic realm. But there are already some other ways for students to represent what they know. In biology, for example, you have to show the correct way to dissect a once living thing. In chemistry, you have to use the correct procedures to conduct an experiment and publish the results. In math, you have to use the correct procedures to solve a problem. In music, you have to perform a piece of music that meets the standards for the instructor. In theater arts, you have to perform a role without errors in front of an audience. And in art, you use a specific medium to display a piece of work. Unfortunately, in other subjects, there are a large number of paper and pencil tasks that don't allow for students' creativity and strengths. We may be ignoring the untapped talents of our students when we default to paper and pencil tasks. National, state, and local testing rely heavily on multiple choice, fill in the blanks, and essay-type questions, which will always be a question for a set of students who are challenged. If we examine the sets of accommodations, such as extra time on tests and quizzes, copies of class notes, oral administration of tests, speech-to-text devices, we see that both special education students and 504 students have some additional protections to support text-based instruction. We need to be aware of the learners in the population that don't qualify for either of those services that still struggle with paper and pencil tasks. For example, for my students that struggle with paper and pencil tasks, I designed an alternative art assignment protocol to use when meeting the class requirements for a lesson. Here are a couple pages from it. This packet was part of a grant I wrote to purchase art kits for some high schoolers that were challenged with strictly paper and pencil tasks. Let's zoom in. The first page deals with the acknowledgement of skills that support concept development and self-regulation. We'll talk more about self-regulation in an upcoming presentation. The second slide represents a flowchart to help students focus on a topic for their alternative assessment. The third page is an explanation of the project when it is completed. The fourth page represents the contract for the proposal with the class instructor, with clear due dates listed. The fifth page is the self-evaluation of the completed project, which must be turned in to the instructor. If you think this is a lot of work, yes it is. But when we review a key point of the action and expression part of UDL, we note that learners are to be strategic and goal-directed. This particular type of alternative assessment provides for students to demonstrate their knowledge with a much wider variety of choices. Zoom out. If you really examine the requirements of such project-based learning, you may see that it is actually harder than just a paper and pencil task because it requires the learner to be a lot more reflective about their work. The hard part about this alternative assessment for the instructor is the design. But once it's set up, the framework for such assessments can be used again and again. In our next chapter, we'll talk about rubrics. Please use the QR code to evaluate the presentation, add information, or ask any questions. Thank you.